You already know how tomorrow could go wrong, not because you have evidence, just a feeling that showed up early and made itself comfortable somewhere behind your ribs. Maybe it's a conversation you haven't had yet, already rehearsed, already gone badly, 3 or 4 times over. Maybe it's a diagnosis no doctor has given you, or a rejection nobody has actually spoken. The future hasn't opened its mouth once, and somehow you've already heard every word of it. This is such a common way to live that most people never question it. You check your phone one more time, not expecting good news, just unable to sit with the waiting. You lie down at night and your body finally goes still, while your mind keeps working, running through things that haven't happened yet, building a case for a future with no confirmed date. Morning comes, and you're tired in a way sleep didn't touch, because the exhaustion was never about rest. It was about how much of the night you spent somewhere that doesn't exist. Sometimes it's smaller than that. Waiting for a reply, watching the little dots appear and vanish, while your mind drafts explanations for the silence, most of them your fault. Somehow, in some version, you haven't actually confirmed with anyone, or it's comparison. Someone your age further along than you, scrolling past on a Tuesday afternoon, and that old tightening starts again, like their life is evidence against yours. There's a strange kind of intelligence in this habit, even if it feels like weakness from the inside. At some point, the mind decided that picturing every disaster in advance was a form of readiness. Protection, almost. If you can feel the pain before it lands, some part of you believes it'll hurt less when it actually does. The way checking a stove twice can feel like it's preventing a fire that was never going to start in the first place. It doesn't really work that way, though. Preparing for something real and rehearsing something imagined feel almost the same in the body. Tight chest, shallow breath, but only one of them does anything useful. The other is just suffering, borrowed early and paid for twice. None of this makes you weak-minded or undisciplined. Some of the most capable people carry this habit the longest because responsibility and anxiety can look nearly identical from a distance. Someone who cares deeply about the people they love or the work they're responsible for will often mistake constant vigilance for love. Nobody tells you that a mind trained to watch for every danger eventually forgets how to rest, even when there's nothing to watch for. Here's something worth sitting with. The situation you're afraid of and the suffering you're feeling right now are not always the same thing. The job might be fine tomorrow. The relationship might not end, but your body doesn't know that yet. So tonight it responds as though the worst has already happened. You grieve a loss that hasn't occurred. You brace against an attack that never lands. Somewhere between the actual event and your experience of it, a second layer forms, made almost entirely of thought. Quieter than the first, heavier somehow. That's usually where the real suffering lives. There's an old teaching in Buddhism about 2 arrows. The first is whatever's actually happening, a hard conversation, a real risk, an outcome you can't control. That one might be unavoidable. Life does contain real difficulty, and no amount of calm changes that. The second arrow is the one you fire at yourself afterward, over and over, replaying it, demanding a certainty from life that was never going to hand any over. That second arrow is optional. Most of what wears you down about the future isn't the future. It's how many times you've already put that arrow into yourself, days or years early, for a wound that might not even happen. Buddhism doesn't ask you to stop caring about outcomes or pretend nothing matters. What it offers is quieter than that. Ways to loosen the second arrow without pretending the first one isn't real. None of it is complicated. It just asks you to notice something you already sense, but rarely say out loud. Some of what's ahead will sound almost too simple to matter at first. Stay with it anyway. The simplest ones are usually the ones we skip past too fast, and they tend to be exactly the ones that end up doing something. The first is the oldest teaching here, and probably the most quoted, though rarely understood the way it's meant. Impermanence isn't only about people dying or seasons changing, though it's that too. It means the future you're afraid of right now. The exact shape you've pictured it in isn't fixed. Can't be. Nothing that hasn't happened yet has finished becoming whatever it's going to be. That future isn't a place waiting for you at the end of a road. It's being built right now, partly by things outside your control and partly by what you do today. Picture someone walking home along an unfamiliar road after dark, a small lantern in hand. The light only reaches a few steps ahead, never the whole path, never the destination, just enough to see where to put the next foot down. Most of us want more than that. We want the lantern to show the entire road before we'll agree to take a single step. So we stand still, demanding a preview of a future that hasn't been written yet, and call that demand being responsible. But the light was never going to reach that far. It isn't broken. That's just what a lantern does. And honestly, it's what certainty has ever offered anyone. A few steps, never the whole road. This is where impermanence stops being a philosophy and starts feeling like relief. If nothing's fixed, the disaster you've rehearsed 100 times isn't a preview. It's one guess, frozen in your head, while the actual future keeps moving, shaped by things you can't see yet. A conversation that goes differently than expected. A version of you next month who somehow knows how to handle this, when tonight you don't. You're not the same person who started worrying about this in the first place. So why would the outcome stay exactly as fixed as your fear insists? Something else sits just behind that first shift, what you're actually holding on to when you're afraid of the future. It's rarely the event itself. It's a specific picture of how that event has to go for you to feel safe. You don't just want the job to work out. You want it to work out in the one way you've already decided is acceptable. Same with the relationship, not just survive, but look a certain way. Prove something you're afraid isn't true otherwise. Think about that phone again, the one you keep checking. It was never really about getting a reply. It's about needing the reply to land in a specific tone, at a specific time, as if only one exact version of "we're fine" could actually count. Buddhism has a word for this: clinging. And it's often misread as meaning you shouldn't care about anything, which isn't it at all. You can care about someone deeply, want the best for them with your whole heart, and still hold that hope with an open hand instead of a fist. Squeeze a handful of dry sand, and the tighter you grip, the faster it runs out through the gaps in your fingers. Open your hand flat, and the same sand just sits there. You haven't stopped caring about the sand. You've just stopped fighting what it is. The future works the same way. The tighter you try to control exactly how it unfolds, the more it slips past you, and the more your hands ache from all the gripping. Non-attachment isn't about giving up on what you want. It's about noticing the moment wanting turns into demanding. When hope quietly becomes a condition for your peace, and loosening the grip just enough to breathe. There's a harder truth underneath both of these. Fear about the future can only survive if part of you agrees to actually live there. Not physically, your body's always here, breathing, existing in this exact moment. But your attention checks out, wanders ahead into some version of next week that hasn't happened, and stays there far longer than it means to. Which is why fear is so exhausting even when nothing is actually happening. You're not just afraid, you're time traveling over and over into a future your body was never built to live in, and your nervous system reacts to the imagined scene almost like it's real. Jaw tight, breath shallow, some part of you still scanning for whatever's coming next. You can be sitting at dinner with the people you love most and still be almost entirely somewhere else because part of you left the table 20 minutes ago to attend a meeting that hasn't happened yet or argue with someone who hasn't said a word. People can feel it, even when you're technically there, nodding in the right places. Presence was never really about where your body sits. It's about where your attention actually lives. Mindfulness, in its simplest form, is the practice of coming back. Not forcing the fear away, just gently returning attention to what's actually true right now. Not next month. This room, this breath. Most people who try it for the first time are surprised by how much is genuinely fine right now, even while their mind insists that somewhere out there, everything is falling apart. The chair is holding you, the room is quiet, and the air keeps moving in and out of your lungs without needing your permission the way it always has. Fear rarely survives contact with a fully inhabited present moment. It needs you somewhere else to keep working. A fourth shift tends to show up more quietly, almost like a question. What if you didn't need certainty to feel steady? Most of us have quietly decided that peace is something we'll allow ourselves once every uncertain thing turns certain. Once the results come in. Once the money problem sorts itself out. Until then, calm gets treated like something you haven't earned. But certainty rarely shows up the way we picture it, and even when it does, another uncertain thing is usually already forming behind it. If peace depends on running out of unanswered questions, most of us will spend our whole lives waiting on a permission that never quite arrives. There's a different kind of steadiness Buddhism points to here: equanimity, not the absence of feeling, and not some forced calm pasted over real fear, just the capacity to stay present with an uncertain situation without being thrown by it. Picture a glass of water stirred until it's cloudy with sediment. Keep stirring, checking, running the same scenario again, and the water stays murky no matter how badly you want to see through it. Stop stirring, let the glass just sit. The sediment settles on its own. Clarity was never something you had to create, just something you had to stop disturbing. None of this is about ignoring real problems or expecting them to dissolve if you sit still long enough. Most of the stirring you do about the future was never producing answers in the first place. It only ever kept the water cloudy. There's a fifth kind of kindness in this too, though it doesn't sound like wisdom at first. It sounds soft, the kind of soft most anxious minds have learned to distrust, like being gentle with yourself might make you careless. So instead, a lot of people meet their own fear with irritation. Why can't I just stop thinking about this? What's wrong with me? On top of the original difficulty and the mental replay of it, there's now a private argument with yourself for having a mind that's afraid in the first place, a third layer of suffering, stacked on the first two. Compassion in this tradition doesn't start with strangers. It starts with noticing your own frightened mind, The way you'd notice a frightened child, not scolding them for being scared, but sitting beside them, admitting the dark really does feel bigger when you're small inside it. You're not weak for fearing what you can't see yet. You're running old software that once kept your ancestors alive by scanning for danger software that hasn't caught up to the fact that most modern fears aren't lions in the grass. They're emails. Silence from someone who hasn't texted back. Meeting your own fear with irritation has never once made it leave faster. Meeting it with the same patience you'd offer a friend usually loosens the grip in a way force never could. Then there's the matter of certainty itself. How sure are you, really, that you know how this is going to go? Most long-rehearsed fears eventually stop feeling like guesses and start feeling like facts. You've run the scenario so many times your mind quietly reclassifies it not "this might happen" anymore, just "this is what's going to happen," like you already lived it and are only waiting for the world to catch up. It's one of the crueler tricks an anxious mind plays. It steals your ability to be surprised by anything good. That comparison from earlier, the scrolling, the tightening runs on the same trick wearing a different coat. It assumes their story and yours are moving at the same pace towards some finish line only one of you can reach first. You don't actually know that. Neither do they. Buddhism calls the alternative beginner's mind. Meeting a situation the way you would if you'd never encountered anything like it before, without 100 imagined disasters standing in for actual knowledge. It's not about naively assuming everything works out. It's about admitting honestly that you don't know, that the story you've rehearsed is one version among many, and that some of what's coming might not look anything like what you've spent so many nights predicting. Not knowing usually gets treated like the enemy. It's actually the only space where anything other than your worst case has room to exist. You might have rehearsed a specific rejection so many times, a friend pulling away, an opportunity slipping past you, that some part of you already grieved it, already adjusted your expectations down to match a loss that hasn't actually happened. And then sometimes life goes a completely different direction, and you're left oddly unprepared for good news. All that energy spent preparing for the bad kind. Last of all, and maybe the most practical, what do you actually do with your hands and your hours while all this settles? None of this is meant to leave you passive, just waiting for peace to show up on its own. What Buddhism sometimes calls right effort is really just this: energy spent wisely, not wasted on what's outside your control, not withheld from what's actually yours to do. Go back to that traveler on the dark road, the one with the small lantern. There's a version of them who stands frozen, demanding the whole path be lit before they'll move, and another version who just looks at the few steps the light actually shows and takes them. Not recklessly, just honestly, one visible step at a time, trusting a little more road will show up exactly when it's needed, the way it somehow always has. Right effort might look like preparing reasonably for a hard conversation instead of scripting every version of it in advance. It might mean taking the one action that's actually available today, sending the message, having the honest talk, and letting go of the 50 contingency plans your mind wants to build for outcomes that haven't happened and might never happen. It's the difference between steering a boat and trying to control an entire ocean. Only one of those has ever worked for anyone, ever. None of these shifts need you to become a different person overnight. and none of them work as a single decision made once and forgotten. They work the way most real change works, quietly, in small moments, mostly invisible to anyone watching. You could start tonight next time you catch your mind rehearsing tomorrow's disaster. Just name what's happening without judging it. This is the second arrow, not the first. Notice it the way you'd notice weather passing overhead. A thought, not a confirmed booking on your future's calendar. 3 slow breaths help too, not to fix anything, just to interrupt the story your mind is building long enough to remember this exact moment is still safe. In through the nose, a small pause. Out slowly through the mouth. It won't dissolve a real problem. It'll usually quiet a manufactured one though. Or try this. 1 piece of paper, a line down the middle. On one side, what's actually in your control today, maybe just the one message you could send. On the other, what isn't, and practice letting that side go, even just for the next hour. Most fear lives entirely on the wrong side of that line, dressed up to look like it belongs on the right one. And before sleep, when the mind wants one more round of rehearsal, name a single thing from today that was enough. Not perfect, not resolved, just still standing somehow. A conversation that went fine. Nobody upset with you. That's it. That's the whole exercise some nights. If what you're carrying feels bigger than worry, if it's been in your body for months, wrecked your sleep long enough that you've forgotten what rest even feels like, or made ordinary days hard to get through, these words aren't a replacement for what a trained person can offer, sitting across from you, listening in a way a video never quite manages. Reaching for that kind of help isn't a failure of practice. Often it's the wisest form of right effort there is. Picture that same road again. The traveler, the small lantern, dark, stretching further than any light can reach. For a long time they stood at the edge of it, refusing to move until the whole path revealed itself, already exhausted from a trip they hadn't even started, because they'd walked it 100 times in their head, always toward the same ending. At some point, quietly, without any single dramatic moment marking it, they just looked down at what the light actually showed. A few feet of road, solid ground, enough to place one foot then the other, not because the fear was gone, but because they'd finally understood the lantern was never broken. It only ever showed a little at a time. The same amount it's shown everyone who's ever walked anywhere in the dark, including every person who came before them and made it to morning. The storm they'd spent so long rehearsing might still come. Buddhism never promises it won't, and neither does honesty. Some outcomes really are hard, and pretending otherwise isn't peace, it's denial wearing peace's clothing. But the version of the storm that lives in your head at 2 a.m, stirring the water again and again, insisting you solve it tonight, that version has never once matched the one that actually shows up, if it shows up at all. And if it does, you'll meet it then with whatever that day actually holds, not with the worn-out version of yourself who already fought it in your imagination 1,000 times before the first real drop of rain fell. Tonight, when your mind opens that familiar screening room again, replaying tomorrow before it's even had a chance to happen on its own terms, you don't have to fight it or shame yourself for walking in. Just notice where you are, thank the part of you that was only ever trying to protect you, and close the door gently anyway. Tomorrow will still get its chance. It doesn't need you at the premiere tonight. Peace, in this sense, was never about knowing how things turn out. It was about no longer needing that knowledge before you're allowed to rest. You can care about the outcome and still put it down for the night. Prepare for what's actually yours to prepare for, and let go of the 50 other versions your mind keeps auditioning. Then walk the next few feet the lantern actually shows you, and trust that a little more will appear exactly when you need it, the way it somehow always has. If there's one thing you're ready to stop pre-living tonight, one imagined future you've rehearsed enough times already, just name it to yourself quietly. Let this be the last rehearsal. Not because you solved it, because you decided it doesn't need you standing guard over it anymore. If this kind of quiet reflection is something your mind needed tonight, stay a little longer here. This is a small, steady place for tired minds doing their best. It'll still be here next time the dark feels bigger than the lantern in your hand.